Testing, testing, testing. Where should I stand? Should I stand right here? Is this good? The lighting good? All right, great. Hello everybody and welcome to my channel. My name is Danon and today we are going to be building a beer box cowboy hat. I'm actually going to be using two types of materials. We're going to be using an actual beer box because most of you are going to be using beer boxes for their hat, and also poster board, and I'll reference the two together so that you can see how the measurement from the beer box translates onto the poster board. So in the first video we did use a Budweiser box, and that's what the dimensions were pretty much based on, and I was using measurements from these folded lines right here. And but today, with referencing to the poster board, and I give you the measurements measuring from the middle to the outside and from the middle to the top and the bottom, you'll actually be able to use boxes like this Mech Ultra, for instance, where it is obviously a taller can, which makes this spine significantly wider and will throw your dimensions off if you're using the old videos reference points of the folded lines. And in all actuality, this box may not be wide enough to make a hat without adding some extra material on there. I don't know, I haven't done one. So make sure you follow along because I might do one of these in the future. So I'm not gonna waste any more of your time. Let's just come on over to the table and we'll start laying out the dimensions for a beer box cowboy hat. Okay, so now that we have our box, and by the way, I've made hundreds of these hats and I will probably make a mistake. Seems like I end up making a mistake when I'm trying to explain something, even though I've done it 100 times. So just bear with me. The first thing we do is we have to cut the box down. You're obviously not going to use this side because it's got the handles on it. You want this part of the box so that it's sealed on the top. Just go ahead and cut this. And we'll cut this off too. So our first objective is to find the middle of this box. I take my straight edge. I know that this box is 21 1/4 wide. If I measure here, it's almost 20, or it's 20 and a 16th. If you want to round it up to 20, that's perfectly fine. We're not splitting hairs. So half of 20 will be 10. That gives me my middle on that area right there. And since we do have these reference points right here on the tabs, if you want, you can measure from here to here. That puts you at about 7 3/4, which is 15 1/2. So then you can follow this line on up. 15 1/2 makes 7 3/4. And what we're going to be doing is finding the middle of the box right here. And like I said, these dimensions are going to be because this line is not going to be the same on every beer box. But here we're actually using a beer box that you yourself can use for any brand that you want. And that's relatively close. You see us off a little bit, it's no big deal. So the next thing we need to do is find the middle from here to here. I've got 25 1/2, and there's different ways that you can find the middle of this box right here. What I would probably do is come up with an easier number with these folds right here. For instance, if you were to take this measurement and it's 4 3/4, 4 3/4. One way that you can make that, you can find the middle, is to take this line and this line, turn your ruler to make it an evenly divisible number. For instance, keep the ruler here and make a 5. You know half of 5 is 2 1/2. So you just mark your 2 1/2 there, and you can follow that down through the spine of the box, and it will cut your box in half. It's a pretty neat little trick. Learned that on TikTok. And hypothetically, laying my ruler down, it should connect all these lines right down the middle. Perfect. So now we have the middle of the box this way, and we have the middle of the box this way. So I know I need 18 inches across this way. Split that in half with the 9. In half is going to be, let's see. So now we need 16 inches this way. So we have our 18 here, we have our 16 on this side. Ooh, that's not right. Scratch that, I need 16 inches. See, I told you I was gonna make a mistake, but that line is right. Don't look at that one. (16 inches), and then we'll connect these lines. So what I'm demonstrating here is this is going to be your working area, and you can see this is a 24 pack cam box. This much of the material is going to be waste. We don't need that much, but we know we need 18 inches this way and 16 inches this way. So if you were to do it on any other size box, you already know you have a 16 by 18. You know where the middle is, and then we'll start pulling all of our measurements from the middle of this box right here. I know that the middle of this box is 4 3/4. Right here is a bend, and right here, so that's 4 3/4. And like I said, this is going to be the outer bend of the crown. We need to make a line here and a line here because that is going to be the other pitch of the crown. And we'll use our cool little method of dividing this in half, because if you want to be real specific on it, it's like 2 7/8, and then you have to find the half of that. But if you just take the ruler, put it in the middle, take it to the 3, that puts you at 1.5 inches, and there you found the middle. Okay, so now just for reference points, I am going to trace this line so everybody can see it. So now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines that are visible. The two outer lines are going to be the outside of the crown. The next part of the hat is going to be finding 2 3/4, which is half of 5 1/2. I'm going to make a mark at 5 1/2. I'm going to make a mark at 1 or 0, and then I'm going to make a mark at the 1/2 inch mark and the 5 inch mark. And I'll do 0, 1/2, 5, and 5.5. Come on down to this line. Just do the 2 3/4 inch. We don't need this inner line because this line right here is for a different reference point. Okay, so this is 1/2 inch set in from there. Boom, there we go. Now the next step, this mark that I'm going to show you right now is going to be a sizing reference point. When I fold the tabs over to make the sides of the hat, it is going to give me an indicator of where I need to glue the flap. I'm coming in 1/4 inch from the 5.5, and I'm going to do the same on this side, 1/4 inch. And like I said, we're not splitting hairs here. We're just giving myself a reference point to where I'm going to put my glue. Now this is going to be how tall your hat is. I make mine 4 1/4. This is going to help you make your cuts on your crown so that your brim will fit every time instead of having conflicting measurements. This will help you be more consistent. Now, from here, I'm going to come down off of this line 1 1/2 inches. And I'm going to measure over 4 inches. From this outer line, from here to here is 4 inches. And connect this lines. And then we'll do the same for this side. All right, so that's starting to look exactly like I want it to. Now remember, this is excess material. All this is excess material. It's not going to be used. So now the next reference point I'm going to make is from this line right here. I want to come down 1 inch, and you see how it's got this spacing right here. I just kind of follow it over and come down 1 inch. And now from this line right here, I want you to connect that line right there. You really need to pay attention to this part. I have messed this up so many times by drawing this line to the middle or this line. Like I said, I've done it so many times that I actually make silly mistakes. Okay, so now from this outer line, I'm going to measure in 1 1/2 inches. 1 1/2 inches. So basically it's going to be, what, about 1/4 inch? Yeah, it's about 1/4 inch from inside that flap. But either way, if you're using these outer lines as a reference point, we're going in 1 1/2 inches. Now the next thing here, I want to make a 1/2 inch reference point there and there. So from here to here will be a 1/2 inch. Mark 1/4, 3/4. And these are going to be reference points. This and this are reference points as to where you're going to cut your tabs for your crown. These are reference points to where you fold over, and I'll show that as soon as we get all these parts cut out. So this is scrap, this is scrap, this is scrap. I actually keep most of that. I usually just cut this little piece right here if I'm using a beer box. Like I said, that's scrap, that's scrap, that's scrap, and that's scrap. So now when we're making our cuts, make sure you cut the right parts. Now I'm gonna get fancy on you because I need my cutting board. What I really want to do is cut off all this excess material. And this line doesn't have to be perfect because you're not even gonna be able to see that once the hat is constructed. A lot of it will actually be cut off. Oops, so I made a mistake. See, on this side I was actually able to mark my points on the inside there. I should have done that on this side too, because if not I won't be able to see it. So that cut has been made. I'm going to slice this down here. Now if you make this line too wiggly, when you fold it over, it's going to be, you're going to see it. So make sure you do this one nice and straight. You can use a straight edge if you need to. Yeah, I don't like that little tab on there. I usually just cut it off. That sucks. Okay, so now you have the template cut out, and that suspiciously looks a lot like my Headstrong Hats logo. Now you know the dimensions on, you got a 16 by 18, and you can use any box because you know that from here to here is 4 3/4, and you can pull your dimensions from the middle outwards instead of just using this line and this line as reference points to measure in per my old video. Now, one thing you want to do is transfer these lines to the opposite side. One quick way to do that is to just follow them like this and mark, and there's your middle. And the reason we transfer those lines, but first, before we flip this over, bend that from the inside line here, make a nice crease. And if you don't have one of these, this is a some kind of roller, I think a wallpaper roller or something I got from from Lowe's for $2. It works really good on making a nice secure crease. We'll do the same on this side and this side. And once that's folded like that, take your razor blade and make a nice scoring line down this middle. Don't cut all the way through. You just want to lightly score it so that when you bend this way, you just want to lightly score it. So you got the hat bent like this and this, makes it flat. When you push in by having it scored right there, it'll push through a lot easier. So it's basically a fold for you. So once you get your hot glue nice and hot and ready, you just take the hat and you fold it over to that mark right there. And once the glue dries, you can fold it over to that mark right there. Now, one of the sizing things that you can do is actually shrink that in to the middle. You can make that smaller if you'd like. Also, when this gets folded over on this side, this line tells me where to glue here. If you want your hat a little smaller, you can always pull it in a little further, but I would do it equally on all four sides. Same thing with this. When you go to glue your hat, you can put it there and there, or actually fold it further over. Now, one other adjustment that I think that you can make, I haven't experimented with it yet, but if you were to take this line right here and bring it in, it will make your hat actually shorter. So from here to here, it brings it together, and that should overall decrease the size of the hat. And that's one way you can experiment with the sizing. The measurements that I've got right here are going to be 26 3/4 inch around on the outside. And that's because with the tabs on the inside and also with the elastic, which let me show you this elastic that I use. This elastic that is called Sewology woven elastic, and it feels a lot like Nike Pro waistband material. It's really cottony soft on the inside there. It works really good. It was $3.50 from Hobby Lobby. I'm sure you can get it cheaper than that somewhere else, maybe online, but that pretty much does it for this section of the video. I'm not going to use this because I'm still trying to find an epoxy that will hold this together. So hang on just a second. We're going to switch over to the poster board because, like I said, the Budweiser, I haven't figured out how to make that successfully stick without putting the eyelets in there. So you take one of the flaps and line it up to the outside of that black mark that we made, or to the inside. Like I said, it's only going to give you a 1/4 of an inch adjustment right there. It's not a whole lot, but I typically go to the outer mark, and I lay the cardboard down or the poster board and I slide it. And just let that sit. Roll it over and press it. That'll help it stick too. You'll take this, flip it over. Makes it easier to run your hot glue right down the side there. So therefore, looks like I kind of messed up on that one right there. But anyway, this is just for demonstration purposes. I'm not making a White Claw hat just yet. But so at this point, your hat should look like this. You'll remember the reference points we made on the inside. Just put you some glue here, run it down, and then gently fold over to your visual mark. And repeat the process all the way around the outside. And repeat the process all the way down. It actually gets easier as you go around, because the sides will actually be held together. I know that may be hard to see, but you can see I'm using those reference points there. And one more, we'll finish it up. And I'll hold that in place until the glue sets a little bit. Now, if you're using a Budweiser box of that material where it won't stick, this will probably come apart. This right here has a lot of tension on it, the way that the hat is round right there, and it will flip up. So that's why I use these eyelets. I drill a hole through it and stamp the eyelets in there, and that actually holds the hat together better. But the poster board works really good. Miller Lite products I don't have a problem with, but it's something about that material. So now you can just take the hat, press down with your fingers, and there you have the general shape of the crown. Now, like I said, if you were to take these measurements and move them in a little bit, that will make the overall diameter of your hat, smaller. And that way, if you have a smaller head, that's one way you can adjust it. So now the next step is to cut off this excess material. And this doesn't have to be perfect, because these are actually just going to be the tabs that will get hidden underneath the top layer of the brim. So now, if you'll remember, this line we made here and this line we made right here on from the outside in, excuse me, we can just we can kind of just eyeball a line like this. So now I have a reference point as to where I want to make these cuts. And I skip probably maybe 1 inch. You can do them tighter if you like. There's no science to it. The idea is to make tabs so that you have something to glue the top part of the brim onto. So now the next step you would be to fold these tabs up. If there's any like this, you can actually just cut those off. Alright, so there you have it. You have the crown portion of the hat. And I have a tape measure here, sewing measurement. And as you can see, that is just about 27 inches. 27. That's right at just under 27 inches. Could be 26 3/4. But like I said, one way to make that smaller is to bring these together closer. Bring that together closer, or you can adjust it on the sides here, or you can actually make these lines come in, and that will shrink the overall diameter of your hat. I have a template that's cheating, but you see how it pretty much fits. So once I've made my template and the measurements are the same, it's going to work every single time, right? So if I want to make a hat for someone smaller than these dimensions, I can adjust it. So now let me show you how I made this. Okay, so if you're amateurly going to make a beer box hat, you're going to use the spine of the hat, and your logo is going to be upside down, of course. But one thing you can do to make it more aesthetic is to make sure that your logo is facing outwards on the brim of the hat. So for instance, today on the brim, we're going to cut this side, whereas with the crown, we cut this side. And again, I'm back to a beer box because it has these hard lines on it that are already pre-bent, and a lot of people are going to be using a typical beer box anyway. So when you open your 24-pack box, for instance, some of the smaller boxes may not have this in there. I go ahead and remove it because it is so thick and it makes it hard to shape the hat. It's really easy to remove. Fold it that way, and then I fold it back this way to get a majority of that material off of the hat, off of the box. Because we have these hard lines right here, and let me trace those out real quick for you. Just for visual purposes, you can see where we're at on that. So I have a handy dandy template that I use. I've labeled it front and back. No particular reason, just so that when I do use a custom hat where I'm peeling the labels and putting on something else, I have a reference point. But with your template going front to back this way, and you flip it up, that is what logo is going to be on your brim, right? So that is going to be on the back, that's going to be on the front. You can actually put more of the logo on the front if you slide it one way or the other. But like I said, if you use the other side of the box and you would have cut it this way, your Budweiser is going to be the wrong direction. So that's why I use this part of the box for my brims. But I've drawn these lines here on my template, and you can center it from the outer tab of the box, this hard line here. And like I said, once again, these are just reference points for me when I do my custom hats. That way I know where the middle of everything is. And we already know how to determine the middle of this right here is, you know, you can divide 4 3/4 from itself, or you can just take 5, cut it in half, and there's your 2.5. Or what did I say? Yeah, 5, 2.5. So either way, you can be really picky on where you want the middle of the hat to be. Just you can measure from here to here or whatever. But what I want to do now is give you the total width of this template. This total width is about 14.5 inches wide. So we're 14.5 inches that way. And I'm 15.5 inches this way. And then from the inside of the brim, from side to side, I have 7 3/4. So from here to here would be 7 3/4, if you can read that. And then from, I got so much shit in the way. From here to here I've got 9 1/4. 9 1/4. And then I've also made these marks here. I think they are 6 and they're about 6 1/2. So from here to here would be 6 1/2 inches. From here to here is 6 1/2 inches. From here to here is 9 1/4. And then from here and here is 7 3/4. And then if you don't have a template, you can just kind of, make your way around, try to connect these lines. I know it's not perfect, but you get the gist of it. There's the inside of that. And then from here to the outside I have 3 1/4 inches. Let's do this. Since I have the template, we're going to make it nice and pretty. Yeah, about 3 1/4. So you can take, if you don't have a template like I do, you can just take 3 1/4 and measure on around all the way. Or you can make it larger or smaller or whatever. But either way, you can go all the way around and make your brim. Now, if you want to make a larger brim and you go past this line right here, you're going to run into a design flaw where you're going to see extra label that you don't want to see. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this around here real quick. All right, so there is the outer brim. Now this is strictly for the top. So what you would want to do is cut this out and then take this same pattern and flip it upside down onto another piece of cardboard. And like I said, I always label whether it's front and back. So if you didn't do that perfectly, you can take a pair of scissors and trim it up. But I mean, it's a cardboard beer box hat, right? So there you have it. There is the top portion of the brim, and you can make it as wide and as fancy as you want. But the next thing we're going to do is double check our crown with the hat. See? And there you go. And what you can do is use these lines to figure out where the middle of the hat is. You can line it up there, line it up there. So there we have a good fit. If it doesn't fit, if it doesn't sit down all the way, you need to go back to the drawing board on your crown, or you can actually just trim out a little bit more one way or the other, depending on how well this fits on top of your head. So now we're going to do the bottom portion of the hat. Okay, so I saved you the agony of watching me, tear this box down. But what we're going to do is take the previously cut top portion of the brim. So we had it traced like this. What you would want to do is flip it over this way so that this mating surface goes with this mating surface. And if you had any irregularities in your cuts, it will transfer over to the bottom side of the brim by flipping it like this. But be careful, especially if you're using a marker. If you go get a little crazy and go outside, you're going to mark on your hat, and it's probably going to piss you off. So be gentle. Just make a nice line around here. And like I said, there's your front, there's your back. Obviously, we're going to spray this side. So now, the top portion of the brim is set for the crown. This is the bottom portion of the brim. I'm going to mark it bottom. I always come in an average of about 1/2 inch, and you can adjust this accordingly to your head size. And we're going to cut tabs that will fold up. So when you're doing this, do not cut the outer line. Make sure you cut the inner line. And for a smaller size head, you can even make these even larger. If you're going to use the elastic that I talked about earlier, the Sewology, once you cut this out and make the snips, just take your elastic and sew it in there. And I'm telling you, that is 100% improvement that you can do to your own hats. I strongly suggest learning how to sew. Okay, so I almost made a mistake, and I want to show you this first. Do not cut directly on this line. I would cut outside of the line just a little bit. And that way you have a little bit of forgiveness when you're mating the top and the bottom brims together. If you cut this one too small and you made it with your top one, then you're going to have to make some adjustments somewhere. And the objective is to do it right the first time and not have to keep going back and making adjustments. See, so that is significantly smaller, and that should fit on your head a little better. Next, I take my scissors and I make relief cuts all the way around this hat. What these relief cuts will do is they will fold in. And I know that's kind of pointy, so if you're not going to put any kind of fabric or anything on the inside, I would make these tabs longer. That way they're not, protruding and sticking into your head. Or if you have the ability to make the hat perfectly sized for your head, that's even better. But I make so many of these that I have to make them pretty much of a universal fit. So now you can pick what you want to be the front or the back of your hat. We're going to pick this as the front. This is going to be my front. Make sure it's centered. I can take my hat. I got the back and the back. Take these lines, mark them up, line them up, and you see how the black line transferred perfectly. Alright, so now I got the front of the hat. I've got this lined up. All I'm going to do is go around and glue all those tabs down. So there you go. You got the front of the hat, the back of the hat, just like this. Line it up front and back. Double check, make sure everything fits. So now for my next trick, I use 3M Super 77. The stronger the adhesive, the better. Now for my own personal hats, I would add this piping on the inside there. It adds a little extra pizzazz to it. But for today's purposes, like I said, take your Super 77. You want to put a coat of adhesive there, a coat of adhesive on here. And once you spray them together, let them sit for about 10-15 seconds, kind of fan it a little bit. And I would line your hat up with some kind of reference point. If you're doing your own on poster board, I would obviously make some kind of reference point on each brim. That way you have somewhere to line it up, because once it sticks with that 3M Super 77, it will not come off, I promise. So that will have your hat laid together like that. I'll do that real quick. All right, just put my Super 77 on there. I got the front, and very, very carefully lay your hat, your two brims together, and I would go ahead and start to shape your hat before the adhesive sets. It probably won't matter a whole lot, but that'll just go ahead and allow you to get the basic shape of your hat. See, there is your adjustment tabs there. I'm telling you, if you have the elastic on the inside, it makes it 100% better. If you want to make the hat a little bit more adjustable, leave these tabs longer. That way when you set it down on your head, you know, it'll fit a lot better. But to finish up, just go around with a pair of scissors. And cut off this excess material that we left on there from before. And there you go. Cardboard beer box hat made from a beer box. Repeatable process. You'll be able to do it every time. One addition you can do is add the eyelets there. That makes it look really good. So I hope this video was really helpful on the tutorial of how to build a beer box cowboy hat. If you have any questions, please hit me up in the comments. I usually respond pretty quickly. I love helping people out to make their own custom hats. I know we have a problem with the Budweiser labels not sticking. I'm going to work on that issue. And as soon as I come up with a solution, I will be putting out a video on that. And stay tuned for more of my Headstrong hat builds. If you're not following me on Facebook, you can check me out there under Headstrong Hats. I post updates frequently about projects that I have going on so that you can stay up to date with the latest developments that I'm doing with improving my hats. So stay tuned. Thank you.